In January 1962, a 14-year-old girl started laughing. She couldn't stop. Not for an hour, not for a day, not for weeks. And then the girl next to her started. And the girl next to her. And then it crossed the road to another school. And then to another village. And then to another. For 9 months, across an entire region of East Africa, thousands of people could not stop laughing. They weren't happy. They were in agony. And when the authorities finally investigated, they found no virus, no bacteria, no poison in the water, no physical cause of any kind. What they found was something far more disturbing and far more familiar than any of us want to admit. Stay with me. Because this story does not start with a girl laughing. It starts 6 weeks earlier, with independence. On December 9th, 1961, after decades of German and then British colonial rule, Tanganyika became a free country. 7 weeks later, the laughter started. That timing is not a coincidence. It is the entire point. Here is what independence actually felt like on the ground. In a rural village on the western shore of Lake Victoria, in the first weeks of 1962, the political change had happened, but nothing else had. The same poverty, the same food insecurity. Crop failures had been ongoing in the region for months. The same colonial institutions, still run by the same foreign administrators, still demanding the same behavior. The world outside the school walls was supposedly transformed. Inside the walls, nothing moved. And the people caught in that gap, the people asked to hold still while everything around them shifted, were children. The Kashasha Mission School was a boarding school for girls, aged 12 to 18, run by Christian missionaries. Strict rules, strict silence, away from their families, in a closed institutional environment with no permitted outlet for what they were feeling. Think about what that actually means for a 12-year-old girl in January 1962. Your country just became free. Your parents are navigating something enormous. Economically, politically, culturally. Everything is changing. Everyone is uncertain. Everyone is afraid of what comes next. And you are sitting in a classroom, in a uniform, in silence, being asked to conjugate verbs. The pressure inside those walls was not abstract. It was specific, and it was crushing. It had nowhere to go. Remember that. Everything that happens next comes directly from that. January 30th, 1962, Kashasha Mission School. 3 girls began laughing. We don't know their full names. The historical record protected them, or more accurately, didn't think to preserve them. We know it started in the dormitory, not the classroom. We know there was no obvious trigger. Nothing funny happened. No joke, no incident. It simply started. And within minutes, it was clear this was not normal laughter. It had no object. It didn't rise and fall the way real laughter does. It just continued, mechanically, like a sound a body makes when it has lost the ability to stop making it. Within hours, the girls were also crying, fainting, reporting pain in their chests and limbs. Rashes appeared on some of them. They described feeling out of control, watching their own bodies from a distance, unable to intervene. Witnesses, teachers, other students said it was disturbing to watch. Not infectious in the way that real laughter is infectious. Frightening, The sound was wrong. By the end of the first week, the number of affected students had grown. By the end of the third week, 95 of the school's 159 students had been affected. More than half the school. Laughing, crying, fainting, unable to stop, with no physical explanation any adult could find. The school did what institutions do when something breaks. They closed. Sent all the students home, cleaned the building, declared the problem solved. It was not solved because when the girls went home, they brought it with them. This is the part that changes what this story is. When the Kashasha students returned to their home villages, the symptoms spread, not to random people, not to everyone. It moved through social networks, through families, through close friends, through communities that were already connected to the girls who had been affected. It crossed to another school, Ramashenya Girls' School, then Kanyangareka School, then individual villages in the Bukoba district, then beyond. By some estimates, and these are conservative, over the 9 months the epidemic was active, approximately 1,000 people were affected. Same symptom cluster, no shared food source, no shared water source, no pathogen, no poison. Investigators tested everything. They found nothing. Every person who was affected was genuinely suffering. This was not performance. Uncontrolled laughter for hours, or days is physically devastating. Muscles tear. Breathing becomes difficult. People cannot sleep. Several people collapsed from pure physical exhaustion. They lost weight. Some described feeling like they were dying, and they could not stop. Here is the thing that the initial reports consistently got wrong, and that popular retellings still get wrong today. They called it the laughter epidemic, as if the laughter was the thing. As if this was a story about an unusual symptom. The laughter was not the thing. The laughter was the only exit available. Now I want to tell you how the authorities responded, because this is the part of the story that should make you angry. When the epidemic spread beyond Kashasha, the colonial government sent investigators. This was supposed to be the part where rational, educated adults applied expertise to an unfolding crisis. It was not that part. Their response was immediate and unanimous. Containment. Close the schools. Isolate the affected. Prevent the spread. Treat it exactly like a biological contagion, because that was the only framework they had. And more importantly, it was the only framework that kept them in control of the narrative. Multiple schools were closed. Some were closed, reopened, and closed again. Because the symptoms returned within days of reopening. Every single time. The authorities responded to each recurrence by closing the school again. At no point, and I want to be precise here because the record is clear, at no point did the official response involve asking the students what they were experiencing, what they were afraid of, what was happening in their lives. No psychologists were deployed, no counselors, no structured attempt by anyone in authority to understand what was generating the pressure that was producing the symptoms. The entire response was aimed at the visible behavior. Stop the laughter, restore order, get the institution functioning again. There is a reason for this, and the reason is not stupidity. The colonial administration could not afford to ask what these girls were carrying, because the honest answer pointed directly at the system that employed them. The pressure inside those schools, the rigid institutional control, the suppression of any emotional expression, the demand that these children perform normalcy inside a world that was cracking apart. That pressure was not accidental. It was the product of a specific set of choices made by specific people with specific authority. Asking, "What are these children feeling?" was the one question guaranteed to produce an uncomfortable answer. So they closed the schools instead. I want you to sit with that for a moment, because it matters for more than 1962. So what was actually happening inside these bodies? The clinical term is mass psychogenic illness. The older term is mass hysteria, though researchers today largely avoid that word because of the baggage it carries, and because it was historically used to dismiss and discredit the people experiencing it, which is the opposite of accurate. Here is the mechanism as clearly as I can put it. When psychological stress becomes severe enough and sustained enough, the brain can begin converting that distress into physical symptoms, real symptoms. Measurable, observable, physically genuine symptoms produced by a nervous system under conditions it cannot process any other way. This is not weakness. This is not imagination. This is human neurology responding to an overload it has no other tool for. And it is contagious. Not through any biological pathway, no virus, no bacteria, through observation. When you are already overwhelmed, already frightened, already running at the edge of what you can hold, and you watch someone near you lose control of their body, your nervous system can begin to mirror what it sees. Unconsciously, involuntarily. Because the human brain is wired to read the people around it and calibrate its own threat response to theirs. In most situations, that's an asset. In an enclosed, high-stress institution where everyone is carrying the same underlying pressure, it becomes a cascade. Now apply that directly to Kinshasa. Girls aged 12 to 18, removed from their families, living under rigid rules that required them to suppress any expression of fear, grief, anger, or uncertainty. In a country whose entire social structure was reorganizing around them, with zero sanctioned outlet for any of it. 3 girls crossed the threshold first. Their bodies found the exit, and the moment they did, every other girl in that building who was carrying the same weight recognized it. Not consciously. Their nervous systems recognized it. And one by one, they followed. Robert Bartholomew, a medical sociologist and one of the world's leading academic authorities on mass psychogenic illness, who wrote the definitive analysis of this event, is careful to emphasize that nothing about this was voluntary. These were not girls choosing to laugh. They were experiencing a genuine neurological event, produced by real pressure in a real social context with real physical consequences. Their bodies were not malfunctioning. Their bodies were doing exactly what bodies do when there is no other option. Here is what I need you to understand. The Tanganyika Laughter Epidemic is not a strange footnote from 1962. It is not an African story or a colonial story or a story that ended when the laughter stopped. It is a template, and it is running right now. In 2002 in Portugal, Students across multiple schools began fainting, developing rashes, reporting dizziness and nausea after an episode of a popular television drama featured a mystery illness spreading through a school. Over 300 students were affected. Same mechanism: closed institutions, shared stress. A trigger that gave the pressure a shape it could take. In 2006, in North Carolina, a student reported the smell of gas in a school. Within hours, dozens of students had collapsed with headaches, nausea, and dizziness. No gas was found. None. The building was tested comprehensively. Clean. In 2007, in a factory in Malaysia, workers began experiencing what they described as spirit possession. Screaming, fainting, running through the factory floor in waves. The factory was shut down for 3 days. The episodes followed the social network of the workforce exactly. In 2011, 18 girls in Leroy, New York. But that's the next video. In 2020, thousands of teenagers developed Tourette's-like tics after prolonged exposure to TikTok content featuring those same tics. Same mechanism, different technology, same nervous system. The common thread across every single one of these cases is not geography. It is not culture. It is not the specific symptom. It is this: an enclosed population. A shared stress that has no permitted outlet. A trigger that gives the body a language it wasn't allowed to use. That is not a developing world problem. That is not a 1962 problem. That is a human problem. And here is the question I want you to actually think about, not just move past. When you look at the institutions in your own life, the schools, the workplaces, the systems that ask people to perform normalcy under conditions that are anything but normal, what pressure is sitting in those rooms right now with nowhere to go? The Tanganyika Laughter Epidemic officially ended sometime in late 1962. The episodes subsided, the schools reopened, the colonial government filed its reports. No one was treated, no one was officially diagnosed. No one in authority ever asked the girls what they had been carrying. The country became Tanzania in 1964. The girls who were there, the ones who laughed for days and couldn't stop, the ones who watched their classmates and felt something in their own bodies start to move, are elderly women now, if they are still alive. The historical record preserved the spectacle, the numbers, the strangeness. It did not preserve their names. It did not preserve what they were afraid of. It did not record what 9 months of closed and reopened and closed again schools did to their education or their sense of safety, or their understanding of what the adults in charge of them were actually capable of providing. It did not ask what they were trying to say. That is the oldest pattern in this series, not the symptoms, not the specific mechanism. The pattern of people under unbearable pressure finding the only exit their nervous systems have available, and the people in authority responding to the exit. Closing the school, testing the water, filing the report, moving on. In 1518, it was a woman dancing in a street until her feet bled. In 1962, it was girls laughing until their bodies gave out. Different centuries, different continents, different symptoms, the same failure to ask the right question. The girls of Kashasha were not hysterical. They were not weak. They were not strange. They were telling the truth in the only language they had left.